Brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala wa ba'd. Um, we are going to have, it was scheduled, a short presentation for you about knowing your rights while voting and at the polls, as well as to give you a little education about one particular proposal that we at CAIR Michigan endorse and highly encourage all of you who are watching this, all of our constituents, direct constituents, as well as those who aren't in the Muslim community, to vote in favor of one particular proposal, which is going to be explained by our staff attorney, which will be joining us in one moment. Just as a disclaimer before I bring her on, that number one, this presentation is for informational purposes. This presentation will not be giving legal advice. That's number one, is with all of our Know Your Rights presentations. If you have a specific legal question or a specific concern, then we advise you to call our office number, which actually I will add that to the ticker besides visiting our website. And the second piece of information is that this presentation is specific for Michigan voters. So we know that during these online presentations and lives that we have people that look at our presentations from different states, from bordering states such as Wisconsin, for instance. Well, we're not giving specific information towards other states per se. So we would advise you to go to your CAIR chapter in your state for more specific information, or if you do not have a CAIR chapter within your state, we would advise you to contact the National Office of CAIR, which is based in Washington, D.C., and they can point you in the right direction. Without any further ado, I'm going to bring on my esteemed colleague, Sister Amy, who will be giving the bulk of the presentation. And then after her presentation, we can then have a short question and answer section. So I will join back on. If you have any comments, for those of you who are watching on Facebook or YouTube, you can type in the comments and then we can put them up on the screen. And with that, I will take myself off now and we'll pass it on to Sister Amy.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. As you know, Election Day is coming, is right around the corner. November 3rd, it is the National Election Day. And this election day, maybe more than any other, is very important. So CAIR Michigan wants to make sure that the people in Michigan, that your vote counts and that your voice is heard. So I'm going to provide you with some very basic information about voting and what your rights are at the polls. And then if you have specific questions, like Brother Dawood said, please put them in the chat box, and we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. So let's get started. So Election Day is November 3rd. This year is a little bit different in Michigan because in 2018, the voters voted to change how we can register and when we can register to vote. So currently in Michigan, you can vote, register to vote all the way up until 8 p.m. on November 3rd. That's right, you can actually register to vote on the day of voting. But how you register to vote and where you register to vote depends on how early you register. If you register through October 19th, 2020, you can actually register online or by mail. I would not suggest registering by mail. It is problematic. The post office is running way behind, but registering online is quick and easy. You just go to the Michigan Secretary of State website and you can register to vote right there. It will give you your precinct information and the address of where you would go to vote on Election Day. So you can vote. If you register by the 19th of October, you register online. If you register on October 20th or later, you actually have to register at your clerk's office, and that would be Located in either the city or the town that you live, you would go in with your proof of residency and you would register to vote right there. And you can actually register to vote on election day as well. You can't register at the polls, but you can go in and register at your clerk's office on election day, and then you can vote right there. Michigan also has no reason absentee ballots. So if you would like an absentee ballot, they've actually started mailing them out on September 26th. It's important to request your ballot early. If you want it mailed to your home, you can request it early and then you fill it out at home, and you can either mail it back or you can drop it in the drop box at your city clerk's office. If you mail it back, you do have to provide your own postage. They are not postage paid. So it's important that you make sure you put a stamp on it if you're going to mail it back, and you have to mail it early. If So early voting is all the way from September 24th through November 2nd. If you have not requested an absentee ballot but think that maybe you don't want to go to the polls for any number of reasons, you can actually vote today by going into your city clerk's office and registering to vote there and picking up a ballot where you can request your ballot and pick it up and stand there and vote and drop it in the drop box right there. So if you wanted to do that, you have that ability to do that all the way up through election day. So while we talked about when we can register, when we can vote, and how we can register to vote, who's really eligible to vote. There's a lot of misconceptions about who and who cannot vote, but any U.S. citizen can vote, as long as they're over 18 years of age. If you are a natural born citizen, you can register and vote. If you are a naturalized citizen, where you got your citizenship through the immigration process, you also are eligible to vote. As long as you have your citizenship prior to November 3rd, you are eligible to vote. In order to vote in Michigan, you have to be a resident of Michigan for 30 days prior to voting. So you will have to show proof of residency if you are registering to vote for the first time. There's a lot of states where people who are convicted felons cannot vote. However, in Michigan, as long as you are not currently in jail sentenced for a crime, you can vote. That means if you've had a prior felony, you can still register to vote. If you are currently convicted of a felony or a misdemeanor and you're sentenced to probation, meaning you're not in jail, you're in probation, you're on some kind of a release program, you can still register and you can still vote. If you are currently in jail and you have not been convicted of a crime, or you have been convicted but you are not sentenced yet, then you can still register to vote. So we want to make sure that we're registering everybody who's eligible to vote and who can request their absentee ballot and go ahead and vote. If you are 17 and a half years of age and you are going to be 18 on voting day or before voting day, you can still register to vote. If your birthday is November 1st and you're going to be 18, you can vote, you can register to vote today, and then you can vote after your 18th birthday. So even if you're not quite 18 yet, but you'll be 18 by November 3rd, I encourage you to register to vote and exercise your civic duty to vote. So if I'm registered to vote, how would I find my polling place? This is a really good question, because we've done everything that we've needed to do. We've checked all over the boxes, make sure that we're a resident, we have the proper age. In order to find your polling place, there are two things that you can do. You can either visit the Michigan Secretary of State's website. You put in your name and your ID number, and it will pull up your polling place. It will tell you where you go to vote on voting day. The other thing you can do is you can visit your county clerk's office, and they'll be able to tell you what your polling place is. Some cities and townships, they have multiple locations where you might vote. So it's important that you go to the right location to make sure that you're voting in the right precinct, and especially when it comes to our local elections and electing officials who are going to represent our district. So when else, when we go to vote, we want to make sure that we're doing some things correctly. We need to know, what do we need to bring with us? What do we do when we need help? What would happen if maybe we needed a translator? So all of these things can be accommodated in the state of Michigan. In the state of Michigan, polling places are open from 7 a.m. on voting day until 8 p.m. However, if you are in line at 8 p.m. when the polls close, do not leave the line. Don't let anybody tell you that the polling place is closed and you have to get out of line and go home. That's just simply not true. If you are in line by 8 p.m., you get to vote. Even if you have to stand in line till 9 or 10 o'clock at night, your vote will count. It's imperative that if you are in line at 8 p.m., that you stand there and you ensure that you get a ballot. Some people will tell you that you need to bring a picture ID with you. That's not necessarily true. If you have a picture ID, you absolutely should bring it with you to the polling place. If you do not have a picture ID, you don't have to worry. You still can vote. You can vote without a picture ID. The easiest way to vote is if you bring your Michigan driver's license or your state ID. Even a student ID with your picture will work, your passport, your military ID, your driver's license from another state, or really any other ID. But if you don't have any of those documents, you can actually bring a utility bill or a bank statement, a check stub from a government check, or any other document that you have that's an official document that has your name and address on it. If your name, what happens if I need help at the polls? Maybe I need a translator. Maybe I need assistance reading the ballot for many various reasons. You can bring anybody with you to the polls that you want. If you have a child that you want to vote with you, you can absolutely vote with your child. If you need somebody to read the ballot to you and help you fill it out, you can bring that person with you. And it doesn't have to be anybody special. It could be anybody that you want it to. It can be your friend, your neighbor, your cousin, your aunt, your child. Anybody can come with you. If you need somebody to translate the ballot for you, you can bring that person with you as well. If you need a translator at the polls, you can always request one. Also, if you live in a precinct where you have a heavy population of people who might be citizens, but English might not be their first language, they should have people there to interpret for you, and you have the right to request that should you need one. And some people will tell you when you get to the polls that maybe you can't bring anything in with you, and that's simply not true. You can bring any piece of paper that you want in with you. You can't bring advertisements for political candidates with you. But I know one of the great things to do is you can get a sample ballot. I would recommend that everybody, prior to filling out their ballot, they go to the clerk's office and they request a sample ballot. And then you can look at the candidates and you can see, especially for some of our local elections, we might not be as familiar with the candidates for school board as we are with the national candidates who are running ads at the cost of millions of dollars a day to run these ads. So go get a sample ballot, look up the candidates, decide who you're going to vote for, fill it out, and then take your sample ballot with you to the polls and use it as a cheat sheet to make sure that you are ensuring that you're voting properly. You can take your time. There's no rush. There's no time limit on how long you can take to vote or how long you can stand in the polling place. So take your time, take your paperwork with you, make sure that you're voting for the candidates who you truly feel deserve your vote. And if that means you take a piece of handwritten paper with names on it, or you take a sample ballot with you, you have the absolute right to do that. So what happens if we go to the polls? We have our ID with us, we have our documentation of residency with us, we have our sample ballot and it's completely filled out. But when we get there, they look up our name and they say, "Oh no, you're not on the voter rolls." So what do we do then? Well, what we don't do is we don't worry. Even if your name doesn't show up on the voter rolls, that doesn't mean you don't get to vote. You actually can still vote. They have Michigan has an affidavit that you can sign. So you sign the affidavit, and the affidavit just is says that you are swearing or affirming that you believe that you are qualified and that you are a registered voter. And if you sign that affidavit and you have your proof of residency with you, then you absolutely get to vote and your vote will count. So what if I do all that and I show up and they still tell me, okay, well, you can't vote. I don't think you have the right to vote. You have your paperwork, you're willing to sign the affidavit, and somebody says, well, we're not going to let you vote today. You should challenge them because everybody has the right to vote. And if you know you're qualified to vote and you know that you've registered to vote and you believe that this is a mix-up, you can actually ask to be sworn in by an official there, and they will swear you in and they will ask you questions. Questions like, are you a US citizen? How are you a US citizen? Where do you live? What's your address? When did you register to vote? And then once you answer those questions, you can sign the affidavit, and then you absolutely have the right to cast your vote. Nobody who goes to the polls who is qualified to vote and knows that they registered to vote should be turned away. And if you do experience trouble at the polls, or people are bothering you, or they're trying to turn you away, and you know that you're registered to vote, you can always call our office. You can call CAIR Michigan. We always have people on standby on election day. Our numbers scrolling around at the bottom of the screen. So I suggest you take it down and take it with you. If you experience problems with the polls, we have been known to come to the polls and assist people with their rights to vote. So those are the basics about voting. So let's just, as a quick recap, right now Michigan has open voting, so we can vote any day between now and November 3rd at 8 p.m. If we're qualified to vote, we're voting. We're either gonna fill out our absentee ballot that was mailed to us. We're gonna go to the clerk's office and register to vote and vote the same day. We're gonna show up at the polls and vote. We're not going to allow anybody to turn us away when we know we're ready to vote. We're going to take with us any tools that we need to be able to vote effectively, and that includes any person that we need to help us, to provide assistance to us, either by reading the ballot to us, translating it for us, helping us fill in the bubbles, or just standing there for moral support for us. We're going to take those people with us. If we need to take our documents with us, we're going to take our documents. If we need to take our sample ballot as a cheat sheet to make sure that we are voting for all of the right candidates, we're going to do that. So those are what we're going to do. And if we experience any trouble, we're going to call CAIR Michigan to help us ensure that we have the ability to cast our vote. So those are all the things that we're going to do. One other thing that CAIR Michigan would like to encourage you to do this November 3rd, or whenever you vote, if you're voting early, we would encourage you to vote yes on Proposal 2. On your ballot, it will show up as Proposal 20-2 because it's the year 2020. So it will actually show up as Proposal 20-2. And 20-2, the proposal is intended to make a constitutional amendment to the Michigan Constitution that will require law enforcement agencies to obtain a search warrant prior to accessing, searching, or downloading any of your electronic data or electronic communications. This is a very important step. It is moving us towards the law recognizing the inherent privacy interest that we have in our electronic data and our electronic communications. Right now, there's an understanding that there has to be a warrant to search your home because of the type of private information that we keep inside of our home. Our documents, our communications, are really, really most private and most privileged information is historically has been kept in our home. However, with the way technology is moving and has been moving for several years now, people are keeping more and more private information on their electronic devices, their cell phone, their laptop, and their tablet type devices. It's the same type of information that for generations people had kept in their home. So this law really recognizes the change in the way that people are keeping and storing information and communicating, such that it'll raise the standard from what's being done currently with regards to searching and seizing electronic data and electronic communications, and put it on par with the rest of the criminal investigations. It will require the police to have a probable cause standard and be able to meet their standard of probable cause before they receive and access your electronic data and electronic communications. CAIR Michigan believes that this is an important and proper step towards ensuring that everybody's civil liberties and civil rights are continuing to be protected, and it's moving the law closer to what people are actually doing and actually engaging in currently. So we are strongly encouraging anybody who values their privacy and values their constitutional rights to privacy to vote yes on proposal 2. And with that, I have no more information to share, and inshallah, we will open the floor if there are any questions that have come in.
Yeah, there are no comments that have come in yet. For those who are watching, you are welcome to put in comments. I would like to make an additional comment just to add on to Sister Amy's excellent presentation, and that is your safety at the polls. And being that we know that we have our rights, but also safety comes first. And we know not only that's been reported in media, but we've heard certain people say, including one very high up public official, that there may be people going to polls to monitor the polls explicitly what they're saying, but really as a form of voter intimidation. And some of these people could actually be armed and be open carrying and knowing different state regulations, including having a concealed weapons license in which it could be flashed if they have a weapon, or have even a weapon that they have, let's say, on a sling, but they don't have the magazine in it, right? So like there are certain exceptions that have been given in the state of Michigan and the legislature around people who can carry firearms within a certain distance of, let's say, not on the property of the not inside of a school, for instance, but like on the sidewalk or by a house of worship, in which there's also some voting that takes place in those. So if you see someone who is talking to you and trying to intimidate you from voting, or is open carrying and looking at you in a funny way, if you feel scared, safety comes first. You should call law enforcement. Okay, if you're outside, you should call law enforcement. And then afterwards, give us a call at CAIR Michigan, because we have contacts and we are in conversation with different law enforcement entities. Our safe space director, Sister Zainab, attends a monthly meeting with federal, state, and local law enforcement, and we have contacts. And I already know that certain municipalities are already on guard in relationship to this. If you feel that your life is in imminent danger, leave, right? Leave, and perhaps you come back and vote, but call law enforcement and then give us a call. And I can't stress that enough, because we can't, as we have our rights that are protected under the law, we have the primary responsibility of taking care of ourselves. And sometimes if we pick up the phone to call law enforcement, they may not get there in time to actually stop a potential situation if we feel that we are in impending or imminent danger. So I just had to say that to you all who are watching, as well as Sister Amy. I know we've talked about this in the office, and it's some of the rhetoric that's going out here. It's real, and we should not underestimate that there may be in certain zip codes in certain areas, there may be the potential for voting intimidation. I don't expect that, like, let's say, on the west side or east side of Detroit, for instance, but it could be in certain areas out in Macomb County, for instance, or in other areas, maybe in some places further out in Jackson County, and et cetera. So we just wanted to relay that to you. Do you have any further comments about that, Sister Amy?
No, I actually think that's really good advice. We know in other states that have early voting at the polls that people have showed up with the intention of disrupting the voting process and to dissuade people from casting their lawful vote. So I do believe that that is really, really excellent advice. We have to, be secure, and when we're voting to exercise our right, we have to feel safe, and we have to do it in a safe manner. And I would just like to say that there are many ways that could be effectuated. If you do find yourself at the polls and you're feeling unsafe because of an unsafe presence, you can go to your city clerk's office and you can request a ballot there. So there's other options for voting if that does take place.
Yes. Well, being that I have I don't see any comments, Sister Amy, we won't prolong this. But again, as Sister Amy said, if you have any issues as far as at the clerk's office or actually on election day when it comes to voting at the polls, then please give us a call immediately at 248-559-2247, 248-559-2247. And we have, as also Sister Amy has mentioned, we've been called before as it relates to some irregularities and even some shenanigans at polling places, in particular in the past in Hamtramck and as well as in Dearborn, Michigan. So please give us a call. And with that, may Allah Azza wa Jal bless each and every one of you. And also, as a reminder, our class for the history of racism and resistance in America will be this Thursday, and we're moving the time back to 7:30 p.m. Eastern to accommodate the Maghrib prayer time in Southeastern Michigan. And this week's instructor will be Professor Saeed Khan, who is a public intellectual as well as a professor at Wayne State University, and he will be talking about the history of colonialism here in the United States of America and some of the structural effects that we see ongoing as it relates to colonialism reaching here in what we know now as these United States of America. So again, 7:30 p.m. Thursday with Professor Said Khan. And with that, thank you very much. May Allah bless you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.